How do you ensure names are suitable, pronounceable, and memorable, Ginny?
Well,
Like Starhallow, not like which is also hard to spell, to be fair.
yeah, I definitely like to say stuff out loud. I'm sure that part of this comes from the fact that one of my major creative productions is video. So anything that I write, I'm usually saying out loud anyway, and I'm the first one to say it out loud in most cases. So I do need to make sure I actually know how to do that. But I like for a name, I like for people to be able to read a name in the way that it's supposed to be pronounced. As someone with both a first and last name that people often misspell and mispronounce, my real last name, not my internet last name. I have had a lifetime of experience in seeing how easily people can mangle relatively simple combinations of letters on the page. So I do try to just envision what does someone think when they see this? What words does it look similar to? And then also when a word or a name is going to reach a lot of people and I want to feel confident that everyone will like it or know how to pronounce it, I mean, I'll run it by other people. I'll be like, what name of these is your favorite? Or how would you say this name? Or does this name feel like an evil person to you? Or something like that. I mean, honestly, like my own gut reactions and the gut reactions of people around me are the most valuable thing. We can theory craft around names as long as we want, but like, where the rubber meets the road is like actual people reading and saying the name.
Stephanie, do you have a safeguard for suitable, pronounceable, and memorable?
Nope, don't care. No, so
I mean, I guess because you're a filmmaker as well. How does that feature? Because people are literally, it doesn't just happen in your head. Like it literally has to happen on a screen, right?
yeah, I think one of the things though, like let's my first series, like the female protagonists are Floribel, Amira, and Star. I'm like, okay, I have a Floribel. Some people are gonna mispronounce that. They don't know it means beautiful flower, so I gotta have something super simple. Star, easy, done. And then so that's fine. And then the male protagonists, their names are like no more than 2 syllables. And so like, but they're different. And I hope that the personalities and those things are the things that make them distinctive. But I don't try to make like crazy names that are hard to pronounce. And like I said, with the curse that I had, because I knew it would be difficult to pronounce, that's why I put the apostrophes in there because the dashes just didn't look as pretty. But another thing that I do too is like, how does it feel in my mouth? Like like I said, I have neurodivergence things, and things have to feel right in my mouth, and they have to sit right in my soul. So, I mean, it's like if I have a person named Floribel, she's feisty, but she's like one of the best people you'd ever know, right? Until she tries to, well, never going to go into that one, the spoilers. But the thing that she does that is completely antithetical to her personality kind of sets her, So it's kind of like I try to think about those things and try to make sure that the name sort of encompasses that person at a certain level so that there's enough of a distinction. But as far as being pronounceable, I mean, there are people with different reading levels. There are people with English as a 17th language. I'm not even going to pretend like people are going to be able to pronounce everything, even if it's like, I mean, if you think about the differences between European languages, how you pronounce I's and E's in English versus lots of other languages, like, I mean, in Spanish, it's like if you see those things, like you're not going to get it the same. I mean, gato, like it's like it's a cake or it's a cat. If you think about Spanish or French,
are you pronouncing it French or
there's
Spanish?
Like an X in there, that's in one of them. So, and it's silent. So every language has its little quirks, and so I just don't necessarily think about that. I just try not to make it. I'm not going to have 12 difficult names in a book. Or you're in a screenplay. But then another thing too is if I have a name like Floribel, her friends call her Flora. You know what I mean? I always have that nickname. If I have a Cassandra, she might just be Cass. I mean, there may be someone who's just referred to as a couple of initials, CC or TT, something like that, just to make it so that, and also there's that familiarity so that they kind of feel like they're in on it, the psychological triggers. So those are the kinds of things I think about more so than the name, because your parents named you before you had a personality. So like we have the ability to rename these people after they have their personalities developed. Like your name may not suit you. You have to go through legal channels to change your name because it doesn't feel right. But we have more of an innate understanding of our characters and if the names remotely fit. So I don't really think about it that hard. Long story short, I don't think about it that hard. I try to make the differentiation with the character and make it so that that's what they kind of, if it starts with an F and the person's feisty, I know it's Floribel /Flora.
That is actually a technique I read about on Mary Rennick Cowell's blog, is that she will take an identifier for the character and choose a name that starts with the same letter. So if it's somebody who always wears very big earrings, they might be called Enid or something. And she does that very intentionally to try to tie the two things together in the reader's mind. I thought it was very clever. I just want to share that. Another technique that I have used in the past, particularly when making up things by using Google Translate or using other languages, is a technique I call verbal erosion. So I will ram the word together and then say it 50 times and see what it sounds like once I've said it 50 times. And if it's got a little bit kind of mangled and eroded in the process, that tells me how it's going to sit in the mouths of people. And also it gives me I write a lot of slightly more historical stuff. So it gives you the feeling of like, this is a name that has sat in people's mouths for 100 years and they have chewed it. So another thing you can play with and try.
I mean, verbal erosion is such a nice term for that, because we see it all around us all the time. I can remember a time when we called them personal computers, and now they're just PCs.
Or
right?
electronic mail.
Yeah.
Even.
Electronic mail, yes.
But yeah, there is an erosion in not just how we say it, but how we write it, how we convey it. And it does give a sense of it being more integrated into a culture.
I mean, language is a living thing. Like, it's constantly changing. So that's one of those things that we need to be aware of too.
Sometimes very fast.
Yes, faster than one would like.
Common mistakes. What are things that we want to watch out against and guard our audience against when we are naming stuff? Laura Ann, let's start with you. What are your thoughts? I saw you instantly go, oh.
I am laughing because a little background. The first portion of my career, I was an editor, science fiction fantasy editor in New York. And my boss, Susan Allison, who's the executive editor of A Science Fiction at the time, had a rule that any character names that had apostrophes in them, she was not going to read. I see, especially in baby writers of any age, and especially in fantasy, and particularly in epic or high fantasy, there's this feeling that your names have to be exotic sounding, and they have to be complicated. And I'm not going to point at any particular role-playing games that might have started this tradition. Y'all know who you are. But it's really hard for readers, as a rule, to get into a character who has a name that they stumble over all the time. And people forget when they're writing characters that your characters are going to have nicknames. If their name is complicated, somebody in their life is going to shorten it. But instead, they'll go very formal with apostrophes. And it's just, it's terrible. Don't do it. Of course, somebody will do it brilliantly and prove me wrong. But generally, don't make your name so complicated that nobody actually will talk to them.
That's a really, really good point. Wolfgang, what are your thoughts on naming mistakes?
Well, I agree with everything we've heard so far, and I'm coming at it a little bit from my days as an editor, and a little bit from my days working at the Pokemon company, where we did a lot of naming of characters and card sets and things. And one of the things we did at Pokemon is, because it's such an international IP and there are players of Pokemon games all over the world, we had to think about what it was like to take a certain name from one language into another, because the cards were illustrated and created in Japan, and then there we were in Seattle thinking, well, we need something that's the English equivalent, and then we need all the European languages. And what I found out very quickly was we could come up with an English name that we liked, but we would hand it to a localization editor for French or Spanish, and they would say, oh, that's filthy. You can't use that. That's rude. And usually it was the Spaniards and the French, occasionally the Germans or someone. We didn't think about that at first, but over time we learned to trust them. Like, okay, we do know that this is a bit of world building for Pokemon that will carry over into 5 or 6 major languages. So let's think about it ahead of time. And when you're doing your world building, you might not be thinking in those terms, but maybe it's worth throwing into Google and seeing if it is going to set off someone's, if they're just going to laugh at it because it's a silly word in Greek or Russian.
Yeah, we call it the snigger trigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of the Nova incident. I think it was
Yeah.
Ford named their card Nova and then tried to market
Oh.
it in Spanish-speaking countries, and it didn't go over well.
There was
No.
also the MR2 that came out in French as the MR2, which sounds like, yeah, it doesn't hold up.
Even if it's not like a rude word, I think it can still take people out if you don't consider other language readers.
Yeah.
Like I named a character Morelia. I was like inspired by the moral mushroom, and I was like, she's a wood elf. And then a bunch of people in Mexico were like, that's a city here. So every time I post anything about her, people are just like, wait, the city in Mexico? It just comes up every single time now.
Yeah, and I think a quick Google to see if something else is called the same thing. I mean, like especially if you're titling books, but even if you're naming major things in your world.